Again, when I first heard this as an American, I'm like, Mickey Mouse? McDonald's? Taking the mick? What if my uncle's name were like Tony? Like, what if Bob is not my uncle? I don't know. I don't have an uncle named Bob. Hey guys, welcome back to the Girl Got London channel. If you're new here, my name is Caitlin. I'm a dual UK and American citizen, and today I'm revealing some British sayings or idioms that I had never heard before I moved to the UK. Now, before I start with my list, I'm going to take 1 second, leave a comment down below before I get started, telling me the most British phrase or idiom that you can think of. I will give you a couple seconds. Comment below. Okay, so we'll see if it's covered in this list, because number one is the phrase bits and bobs. This just means like lots of like little stuff, or like, here's an example. I'm gonna go to the shop and pick up some bits and bobs. So you're not doing your full weekly shop, you're just picking up some extra stuff, some stuff here and there. We don't say bits and bobs in the US. I'm trying to think of what we would say instead. We would just say like we're gonna go pick up like a couple of things or a few things. So bits and bobs, which I get bits makes sense, but bobs doesn't make as much sense to me as to why we say that in the UK. Speaking of bobs, the second thing on my list is the phrase Bob's your uncle. This was very confusing to me when I first moved to the UK, because I'm like, what if my uncle's name were like Tony? Like, what if Bob is not my uncle? I don't know. I don't have an uncle named Bob. Bob's your uncle means like, there you have it, or simple as that, like easy. Bob's your uncle. Why do you say that? Why do we say that in the UK? I say we. I've never said that in my life. It's one of those things that I don't think would make any sense coming from an American accent, but I definitely do understand what it means now, whereas I didn't when I first moved to the UK. So leave a comment below, second comment of the video. Do you say Bob's your uncle? Do you know where it came from? And do you have an uncle named Bob? Would love to hear in the comments. The next on my list is the phrase taking the mick or taking the mickey. Again, when I first heard this as an American, I'm like, Mickey Mouse? McDonald's? Taking the mick? Taking the mick means to make fun of somebody, but kind of in a lighthearted way, so not to like fully insult them and their entire family because you actually hate them, but to make fun of them in a joking way because you actually like them. This is also a very British concept. We'll have to go over it in another video. But yes, taking the mick is not something we say in the US. They definitely won't have a clue what you're talking about. Some of these things you can probably get away with context clues. So like bits and bobs, if you said that in the US, we'd probably be able to figure it out. But taking the mick, unless someone is familiar with like British culture or British television shows or has British friends, it's not something that we would understand or probably be able to even figure out from context clues. So it was something I had definitely never heard before I moved here. And again, it's one of those phrases that I don't actually say myself. I simply understand what it means. I've adopted some phrases and some I haven't, because some I just feel like an imposter saying them in an American accent, which is an interesting topic for another video. Anyway, moving on. The next thing on my list isn't so much a phrase, but it's the term do, as in like a leaving do or a hen do or like a birthday do, I think people could say. We don't use the word do like this in America, so if we were to host a leaving event for somebody who was leaving a job or something like that, we would just say like a party, a leaving party, a leaving event. Probably we'd say get together, like some sort of get together, a leaving get together. Do doesn't make sense to Americans in this context, so it's something that I had never heard before moving to the UK, and it's another reason why the equivalent of the hen do in America is called the bachelorette party, because we don't use the word do in that sense. And also the word hen doesn't necessarily make sense to us in that context either. So there's another one for your list, hen do. Americans don't know what that means without context clues. But yes, a do as an event or a get together or a party, we don't say that in the US. Next on my list is the phrase, you look smart. Smart in the US is typically only referring to your mental abilities. It's not referring to how you're dressed, which is often how it's referred to or how it's used in the UK. So if you tell somebody in the UK that you look smart, they are not saying that you have a high IQ or that you read a lot of books or whatever kind of intelligence you think they're talking about. They are not complimenting that. They're complimenting what you're wearing, and maybe like you just look particularly put together, you look smart. So this was definitely something that I had to figure out when I first moved to the UK. Not that I got told that much anyway, because I mostly just wear hoodies. But yes, the phrase "you look smart" in the UK is a phrase that I had never encountered before I moved here. The next phrase is swings and roundabouts, as in it doesn't matter one way or the other because it will all sort of wash out the same in the end. So that's a long definition of what swings and roundabouts means. We don't say this in the US. Most of us barely know what a roundabout is. That's not true. We do know what a roundabout is, but we don't use them. They're not part of our culture as much as they're in the UK. And so I'm trying to think what we would say for swings and roundabouts. I mean, probably just something like, oh, like it doesn't matter anyway. It's all gonna be the same in the end. I'm not sure we have a super equivalent phrase. Americans or Brits who know about American slang or language or whatever, comment below if you have a guess as to what Americans might say for swings and roundabouts. But yeah, it's definitely not a phrase that we use in the US. Next on my list is chock-a-block. This is when something is like really rammed, like traffic is chock-a-block, or just something is like really full. And also people can say like chocka. Never said that in my whole life before this video. Like I said, sometimes I absorb the British slang, but I don't use it. We wouldn't say chock-a-block in the US. We would just say, like I said, like rammed, like the highway is rammed or is full. Those are pretty much the equivalent words that I could think of. Again, please feel free during this video to leave your own thoughts on things that I'm missing. But the first thing that comes to my head is just that, yeah, something is like overflowing or rammed or full. We wouldn't say chock-a-block. The next British slang that we definitely do not say in the US is full of beans. So to be full of beans in the UK, it's not talking about baked beans. It's talking about energy or enthusiasm. So somebody's like really energetic and really enthusiastic, they're full of beans. So maybe like a kid could be full of beans. We don't have this phrase in the US, and this is definitely one that without some really good context clues, I didn't know what it meant when I first moved to the UK, because again, it could refer to a couple different characteristics of a person until somebody explains the phrase to you. So yeah, that was a brand new one for me when I first moved to the UK. And the last on my list is spanner in the works. So this is one where Americans do have an equivalent phrase, and there's a reason that we don't say spanner in the works, and that is because we don't use the same word for spanner. We always call it, I mean, I say always, there's gonna be that one American who comments being like, I call it a spanner. The majority of Americans would refer to it as a wrench. So spanner in the works already doesn't make sense to us because we don't know what a spanner is. So we would say wrench in the plans. So it does mean the same thing across cultures, spanner in the works, wrench in the plans, but Brits are throwing a spanner in the works with something and Americans are throwing a wrench in the plans. And again, that's just due to language differences, but there is a pretty equivalent translation there. Okay, that brings me to the end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed. Again, leave all your comments below on your favorite British idioms or maybe things that Americans say that you don't understand. I'd love to explain those in a future video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.